Before we jump in, a quick heads up. This video is pure entertainment, and some moments might make your jaw drop. Now, imagine this. One of comedy's greatest legends stepping into the glaring lights of a morning show, only to be blindsided by a host with a hidden agenda. The tension was palpable the moment Eddie Murphy walked onto the stage, but no one could have predicted the explosive clash about to unfold with Joy Behar. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a masterclass in how quickly a conversation can spiral when respect is thrown out the window. Stick around, because this is a moment you'll want to dissect with every detail. Eddie entered the studio wearing that iconic smile, extending a hand with the effortless charm of someone who has ruled Hollywood for decades. The co-hosts, including Whoopi Goldberg and Sarah Haynes, greeted him with uncontainable excitement, clearly thrilled to have a living legend on their set. "We've been looking forward to this all week," Whoopi said, beaming. But beneath the cheerful surface, a storm was quietly brewing, one that Eddie, with all his confidence, was about to face head-on. The conversation started smoothly, almost idyllically. Eddie's trademark humor and infectious energy lit up the room as he shared stories from his career, revealing the respect and passion he holds for the craft of comedy. Every anecdote painted a picture of a man deeply in love with his art, while also honoring those around him. Even after all these years, Eddie reflected, eyes glinting under the studio lights, I still feel that spark, making people laugh. It's magic. Sarah nodded in agreement. That's why your work resonates across generations, she said. Eddie smiled knowingly. Comedy speaks a universal language. If I can give someone that moment of joy, I've done my job. Then, the atmosphere shifted fast. Joy Behar, who had been quiet until now, suddenly leaned forward, her smile gone, replaced by an expression that hinted at a carefully plotted ambush. "Speaking of comedy," she interrupted sharply, her words cutting through the warmth in the room. "Don't you think some of your past work is problematic by today's standards?" The air grew electric, a sudden chill sweeping across the studio. Eddie's calm smile didn't falter, but a slight tension appeared as he processed the unexpected attack. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Joy was steering the interview into dangerous waters. "I'm not sure I follow," Eddie replied, his voice steady, a master of composure even as the ground shifted beneath him. But Joy pressed on, clearly fueled by the confrontation. "Your old stand-up routines are now seen as offensive. Don't you owe your audience an apology?" Whoopi attempted to intervene, a gentle plea to steer the conversation back on track. "Maybe we should focus on Eddie's new film," she suggested. But Joy was relentless. "No, this is important. Public figures must be accountable. Shouldn't we confront their past?" Eddie's demeanor changed, his relaxed guest persona replaced by a man defending his legacy. "Let me be clear," he said firmly. "I've been doing comedy for over 40 years. My job is to push boundaries, but always with awareness. At whose expense?" Joy fired back, her voice rising, the tension in the room now at its peak. What started as a celebratory interview had become a high-stakes battle of words, leaving viewers questioning every moment. The tension in the studio reached a boiling point. "Those boundaries you pushed left a mark on people," Joy snapped. Eddie, calm yet steely, countered. "Comedy is a mirror to society. If we start erasing art based on the ever-shifting opinions of the moment, where does it end?" A dangerous pause settled over the room as the audience held its breath, sensing the collision of ideologies about to explode. Joy's smirk betrayed her belief that she had cornered him. "So, you have zero regrets?" she pressed. Eddie's reply was unwavering. "I stand by my body of work. I've evolved, like everyone does, but I will not apologize for being a chapter in the history of comedy." The studio seemed to shrink under the weight of their words. Every eye was fixed on the stage. The audience was silent, witnessing what felt like a public trial. That's a convenient way to dodge responsibility, Joy sneered, her contempt clear. Eddie's jaw tightened. Convenient? You think it's convenient to be ambushed on national television? To have my entire life's work twisted into a story you pre-planned before I even sat down? He demanded, his voice commanding the room. The balance of power had shifted. You're throwing accusations. Do you hold every comedian to this retroactive standard, or just me? Then, Eddie turned the spotlight on Joy herself. Tell me, Joy, in your career, have you never said something someone might find offensive? Have you never told a joke that didn't land years later? If we're opening books for a public audit, shouldn't every page be examined? The studio air burned with the weight of his challenge. Joy's confident mask cracked, replaced by a raw, cornered fury. That's different, she stammered flustered. Eddie's response was sharp and theatrical. So you're saying you've never, not once, joked about someone's looks, origin, or beliefs? Never uttered a word that could bruise an ego or make someone feel out of place? Whoopi attempted to intervene, sensing the conversation had spun dangerously out of control. Maybe we should all just take a breath, she urged. But Eddie wasn't slowing down. No, Whoopi. This is the reckoning we need. This spectacle exposes the poisonous double standards that strangle any hope of real conversation in this country. Joy's indignation flared. Double standards? You're being theatrical, she shot back. Eddie laughed, but it was a sharp, humorless bark. Theatrical? Joy, you staged a televised ambush, demanding I grovel for my entire career, and you call me dramatic for pointing out your hypocrisy. The audience was frozen, captivated by a confrontation so raw it felt like it should never have been public. What had begun as a daytime talk show had transformed into a bare-knuckle brawl between two titans, their views irreconcilable. Joy tried to defend herself. I was asking legitimate questions about accountability in entertainment. Eddie's gaze never wavered, his voice like steel. Legitimate? Or premeditated? The studio held its breath as the tension reached an almost unbearable crescendo, each word slicing through the fragile decorum of daytime television. Eddie's composure, usually unshakable, finally began to strain under Joy's relentless assault. You walked onto this set with a pre-written script designed to paint me as a villain, he said, his voice rising with a mix of steel and frustration. And now you're trying to twist reality, gaslighting me into believing this is some noble quest for truth. Sarah Haynes made a last-ditch effort to cool the tension. The core issue we're exploring is how an artist can grow and evolve while respecting their body of work, she said. Eddie softened briefly in acknowledgement. Exactly. Authentic growth isn't about erasing your history or pretending it didn't exist. It's about learning from your journey and building from a place of truth. But Joy refused to relent. Authenticity doesn't shield you from causing harm, she shot back. Words carry weight, and public figures must answer for the pain they've inflicted. Eddie's frustration hit a boiling point. So, the purpose of comedy is to inflict injury? Do you even understand what comedy is? Its role in society, he demanded. Joy defended her position, leaning on the framework of social accountability, while Eddie countered with precision. Comedy is also a tool, a scalpel to dissect power, a bullhorn to speak truth to institutions, a lifeline that brings laughter to the darkest times. But I suppose that doesn't fit the neat little box you've built for me. The other hosts exchanged desperate, searching glances, realizing the conversation had spiraled far beyond a standard interview. Whoopi Goldberg finally stepped in with authority. We are all professionals here. We should be able to disagree without dismantling one another, she said firmly. Sarah added, there has to be room for multiple perspectives. But Joy, ever determined to land her final blow, delivered one last condescending jab. When your platform is as vast as yours, you bear a profound responsibility to wield it carefully. That single comment ignited the powder keg. Eddie had reached his limit. Responsibility to whom, Joy? To you? To some faceless committee dictating what's acceptable this week? Or to the millions who have championed my work for 4 decades? He demanded. Joy answered pompously, to society. Eddie's incredulity grew. Society? You think your narrow personal checklist speaks for hundreds of millions of people. She doubled down, claiming to represent basic human decency. Eddie's voice rose, every word crackling with intensity. Is it decency to trap a guest on national television? To distort a person's lifetime of work, stripped of context? To demand apologies for art created in a completely different era? The studio air was electric. Joy's face had turned a furious scarlet as her miscalculation became clear. I am not sitting here to be browbeaten by someone who built a fortune on offensive trash. And I will not be savaged under false pretenses, she yelled. Eddie responded without hesitation, each word cutting like a blade. Did you really think I'd sit here meekly while you tried to demolish my legacy? Smile while you shrank my entire career to fit your personal list of grievances? The tension was unbearable. The other hosts looked on, wide-eyed and helpless, as the studio seemed to hold its breath. The audience was frozen, a silent sea of faces witnessing a volcanic eruption of conflict the likes of which had never been seen in the carefully manicured world of daytime television. This was no longer an interview. It was a raw, public showdown between 2 titanic personalities, each refusing to yield. This is precisely the hostility I was referring to, Joy declared, desperately trying to reclaim a moral high ground that was crumbling beneath her. Eddie's laugh cut through the studio like glass. Hostility? Joy, you've spent the last 10 minutes on a relentless assault against me, my legacy, and my character. And now you call me hostile for defending myself? The audacity is staggering. Whoopi Goldberg made a final attempt to restore order. All right, everyone, let's take a collective breath and remember why we're here. To discuss meaningful issues. But Eddie was done with diplomacy. This was no longer a debate. It had become a character assassination masquerading as social commentary. The gloves weren't just off. They had been thrown to the floor. Eddie rose from his chair, every movement deliberate, his eyes burning with a fire that sent chills through the room. The energy shifted instantly from tense to alarmed as one of Hollywood's most revered icons reached his breaking point. You know something, Joy? Eddie's voice dropped to a low, menacing rumble, quiet yet far more terrifying than any shouting before. I've navigated this industry for over 40 years. I've faced critics, detractors, and people hoping to see me fail. But never have I encountered someone with the unmitigated gall to invite me onto their stage just to spring this kind of self-righteous trap. Joy squirmed, panic finally flickering across her face. I believe you're overreacting to some simple questions, she said, her voice wavering. Simple questions? Eddie's words detonated across the set. Simple questions? You call systematically dismantling my life's work a simple question? Demanding an apology for bringing laughter to millions. A simple question? Lady, you wouldn't recognize a simple question if it came with a name tag and shook your hand. Behind the cameras, producers waved frantically, desperate to cut to a commercial. But the confrontation had become a runaway train, unstoppable and escalating by the second. I was attempting to have a meaningful dialogue about accountability, Joy muttered, her bravado completely shattered. Meaningful dialogue. Eddie scoffed, bitter and stripped of warmth. Joy, you wouldn't know meaningful dialogue if it was projected on a screen with step-by-step instructions. What you tried to do was score cheap points, ambushing a guest you assumed would just roll over. Whoopi stood, trying once more to intervene. Eddie, perhaps we should all just calm down for a moment. No, Whoopi, Eddie snapped, turning only slightly but keeping his focus locked on Joy. I am done calming down. I am tired of being told to calm down. I am tired of pretending ambush journalism like this is acceptable. I am tired of watching people hijack every conversation to lecture, shame, and signal virtue, instead of engaging with a single real idea. He pivoted back to Joy, who now appeared genuinely terrified. You want to talk about causing harm? Let's talk about the harm you just inflicted. You turned what should have been a celebration of creativity and art into a venomous interrogation. You've shown millions of people that honest conversation is impossible when one party enters with a premeditated agenda to destroy the other, Eddie declared, his voice cutting through the charged studio air. I never intended to destroy you, Joy protested weakly, her words hollow and unconvincing. Really? Eddie's tone dripped with acid sarcasm. Then enlighten me. What would you call this spectacle? 15 minutes spent attacking my character, my body of work, my integrity? Demanding I apologize for comedy that has brought joy to millions? If that's not an attempted takedown, I'd be fascinated to hear your definition of a friendly chat. Sarah Haynes tried one last time to salvage the conversation. I think there may have been a breakdown in communication here. Eddie softened momentarily, nodding at her, but his gaze snapped back to Joy with unyielding intensity. Breakdown? No. Sarah. This was deliberate. Calculated. Joy knew exactly what she was doing when she wrote those questions. She knew the fire she intended to start. Her only miscalculation was believing I would just sit there and let myself be burned. Joy attempted one final narrative grab. I think you're being paranoid, Eddie. Not everything is a plot against you. That single word ignited Eddie's fury. His eyes widened, incandescent anger washing over him, as if even he were shocked by the force of it. Paranoid? He roared, his voice a physical presence that filled the room. Paranoid? Joy, you spent 20 minutes systematically tearing down everything I've built over a lifetime. And now you have the nerve to call me paranoid for noticing? Did you really think gaslighting me on national television would work? That I doubt my own reality just because you commanded it. The audience sat frozen, transfixed by the raw, unfiltered emotion pouring from a man they had admired for decades. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a master of his craft defending his legacy against an opponent who had underestimated both his intellect and his spine. This right here is the problem with people like you, Joy, Eddie continued, his voice resonating with the weight of decades in an industry that had repeatedly tried to break him. You believe you can attack anyone and then dismiss their response as paranoia or overreaction. That tired old playbook has no power over me. Joy sat frozen, unable to respond. Eddie's voice softened slightly, though the intensity remained. Do you know the real tragedy here, Joy? A legend was seated before you. A man who has dedicated 40 years to comedy, to the art of connecting with an audience. You had the chance to explore the mind of a master, to discuss the alchemy of humor, but instead you chose to ignite a political witch hunt. And that, he said, his voice cutting through the silence, is what is truly offensive. An overwhelming hush fell across the studio, the weight of his words pressing down on everyone. After a long, tense pause, Whoopi finally cleared her throat, offering a fragile attempt at levity. Well, this has certainly been an intense conversation, she said, though her voice betrayed the shock that lingered. Eddie scanned the set one last time, the inferno of his anger receding, but the embers of disappointment glowing. It didn't have to be, Whoopi. It really didn't have to be. And with that, he turned and walked off the stage, leaving a stunned audience, a shell-shocked panel, and a thoroughly dismantled Joy Behar. A woman who had just learned a catastrophic lesson about attempting to trap a lion. If this raw display of a legend defending his legacy and flipping the script captivated you, subscribe and join the conversation in the comments. What do you think was Joy Behar's true motive behind launching this calculated attack on Eddie Murphy's career?